Welcome back to the Sunny Talk Spurs YouTube channel ahead of a massive week, actually, for Spurs and Manchester United. And who better to get on the channel to review the weekend just gone and preview the huge game to come than Alice, because she speaks so highly about her beloved Manchester United and also has a soft spot for Spurs. So, how are you doing, Alice?
I'm doing good, as I said off camera, just so buzzing about the Manchester Derby win. We needed that at Man United. We needed a boost. And City's downfall, I mean, I feel like everyone's got to be enjoying it.
Yeah, to be fair, I when we beat them 4-0 the other week, I was sitting there thinking, wow, look what we've done. And now every team seems to be doing it. But, maybe ours was a bit more impressive. But maybe it actually wasn't, because we actually beat them quite a lot. But yeah, I wanted to get you on a video today to, as I said in the intro, we know Spurs are in a weird place, United are in a weird place, weird form under managers and stuff like that. So I just wanted to talk about that ahead of obviously what is due to be a massive Carabao Cup quarter final, which means a lot for both clubs. But we'll get on to the big game towards the end of the video. But as you speak a lot about Spurs and highly about Spurs, I just wanted to get your opinion on the current mood. Obviously, we've just come off the back of a 5-0 mauling of Southampton. Hard to judge in that game because obviously Southampton are one of the worst Premier League sides I've ever seen. Russell Martin's now been sacked, literally hours after the game. But what are you making of the current mood at Spurs? A lot of people were questioning Ange Postecoglou, like outside the club. Some fans are not happy with him. But, we saw in this game, the performance is more like that Ange ball. And also, the fans are not chanting for Ange out. They're cheering him on. They're chanting for Levy out. So what do you make of it as a whole from an outsider point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why Tottenham fans aren't happy. Money has been spent. They've had 4 or 5 games where things haven't gone their way. But I've always said I genuinely believe Ange will be successful at Tottenham, given a couple signings for squad depth, because that is a massive issue, and luck with injuries. Because when you've got Vicario, Van der Ven, and Romero out, that is your core. That would be like Liverpool without, Van Dijk, Konate, and Alisson. That's Arsenal without Gabriel, Saliba, and Raya. And when Gabriel missed 2 games through injury, Arsenal didn't win them. So, and Arsenal fans were like, "Oh, it's because Gabriel's out." But it's like, well, Tottenham had Van de Ven out, and Man United had basically every centre back under the sun injured last year. And I think the fact that you were really good at the start of last season, then the injuries came in and you fell off. And I thought that you were quite good, and you were in a good position after the City win. And I think Ange, there was a period, maybe like a month ago, where Ange had won like 8 and 10 or something, and you were looking good. And then Van der Ven seems to be the injury that always triggers a little bit of a Spurs downfall, it feels like every time. And I think the problem is he doesn't really rotate a doggy and Porro, so they're going to be exhausted. And the doggy's had injury issues. And there is Spence there that I thought looked quite good, but he clearly doesn't trust him a lot. Ben Davies, when he stepped in, has done quite well. But, if you look at all the other teams with the centre backs there that can step in with an injury, Tottenham, I don't know if they quite have that. I think Archie Gray fantastic on the ball, but he's not centre back. Dragusin does all right, but he's quite good off the ball. I think on the ball he doesn't offer what Romero offers, and I think to have those 3 players out is massive. I think obviously Son's been in and out, and then Moore and Odegaard have been out as well. And I think as Ange alluded to, Werner hasn't been particularly brilliant. When you've got Timo Werner up top, when you're playing a back line that has got 2 fullbacks playing every game and exhausted, a teenager out of position at centre back and Dragusin in with Fraser Forster in goal. It's like, oh, to be fair to Tottenham, and Solanke's got no rotation option anyway. I think Solanke's good, but he just ran to the ground. I look at Tottenham squad and I say, you've got great young players, but you've got injury issues, and I think if everybody was fit and Ange could get maybe someone to cover a Doggy or Van de Ven that he trusts, maybe someone that could even play left back or left centre back. You've seen Schlotterbeck, Hinkapie type players do that. If you can get that, and then obviously Moore and Odegaard coming back, but I still think potentially a long-term winger, I think you'd be in a much better position. I think your midfield has been good. As I said yesterday, Sarr was excellent, Maddison excellent. Kulusevski, I think, is better in that midfield role. I think Bergvall had a good cameo the other night. I think he looked solid yesterday as well. Basuma's been hit and miss, but even Bentancur before the ban looked quite good as well. So I think your midfield has been solid. And I think that you have some good players, but I feel for Ange. I do. I generally, I can understand frustration and he can be stubborn. There's things he can get wrong. Maybe he could have given Spence more of a go and more rotation. But I looked at your starting 11 recently and I said, with the injuries, it just isn't that good, and you have to be realistic about that.
That's what I mean. Like, I have to say hats off to some of these players who have stepped in. Like Forster, I'll be honest, when I saw Vicario's injury, I was worried. But Forster we know his limitations, and I think we're actually playing to those limitations. We're not, passed around the back like we would. He passes it into the six, and then they sort of do the work. Dragerson has come in, and actually, I said to a few Spurs fans at work at Talksport today that maybe Dragerson could keep Romero out of the team at the moment. He has performed quite well, and maybe with Micky van der Ven, we haven't really seen them together. So maybe that is plausible. We're getting to this stage now where, like, as you said, they're Archie Gray. I mean, he played a bit of centre back in pre-season. He is, confident dribbling out of it. But what we've seen is we're actually missing Ben Davies as a backup, and we never thought we'd say that. It is that moment where you're looking, and the form of Porro and the form of Udogie is down to playing too much football, and that's where I think my next question is going to follow up. And I think we have had an injury crisis. I'm not using that as an excuse because everyone has it. But do you look at this injury crisis? Who does the blame more fall at? Is it at Levy for not fully backing Ange and really giving him, the resources that he needs? Or is it Ange because sometimes he is running the players into the ground with the tactics that he plays?
I think, Ange's tactics will play a small part because if you look at Chelsea, Maresca plays a more possession, a dominant style of football, which is sort of let the ball sort of do the work and open up the spaces. And Chelsea this year haven't had those problems with injuries that they had at points last year, whereas Poch was more transition and a bit more intensity. And I think, the style that a football that, a Man City play or a Chelsea play, I think he's less likely to get injuries than, Eric Ten Hag's Man United was a bit more transitional based. It got injuries. Ange is very intense. It got injuries. I think there's elements of the style of play, but I think ultimately his ability to not really be able to rotate comes down to Levy. So like last year, you had an all right season. I think you came fifth. If English clubs had done better in Europe, you would have probably been in the Champions League this season. I think considering where you were before Ange took over, to come top five, I thought was a goodish season from Tottenham, and there was elements of progress in football that you saw, but it was the first season under Ange. And I think with Ange, when you actually look at it, the only signing you got in the summer that wasn't a teenager was Solanke. Teenagers are great, youth is great, Archie great, Burville, fantastic signings. I spoke very highly of them because there were two players I was aware of. Odegaard, I did a bit more research on him, and I thought actually profile-wise, he could be a fit. You went and got another teenager in Jan that again I did some research on, but they're all for the future. I mean, Gray and Burville were very good, Mikey Moore's very good. But they're teenagers. If they're 22, 23, you think, okay, that's a bit different. But they're teenagers. Maybe they can be ready to play here and there, but they're going to have to be moulded in. I feel like...
Yeah, still very raw, aren't they? Like, they're going to be at that age. Especially, like, even with Archie Gray playing all those minutes in the Championship, it is just that big step up.
Yeah.
We've seen it from some of these Southampton players.
They're so raw. And I think when you think about it, the only signing Ange got this summer that you knew was going to start week in, week out to a Spurs squad that had a lot of issues last season was Solanke. And I don't think that's good enough from the Tottenham board, just Solanke, because you needed him the season before to replace Kane anyway. It was like you were doing last season's business. Anyway, I think Solanke has been very good. People talk about goals, this and that, but I think his press and his work rate, I think Tottenham looked better with Solanke. And I think there was a game where Solanke and Kulusevski, most games, just their work rate is something that I think is very important to Ange's system. But had he gone out and signed, I don't know, a left centre back, you look at Murillo at Nottingham Forest, I suggested him in the summer. I think he might have been linked to you, or he was linked to Chelsea or someone. If you'd have signed maybe Murillo, left centre back cover, you're in a bit of a different position, maybe comfortability wise. And I think we did a video on it, maybe mine or your channel. We spoke about fullback cover. Just someone to, especially a doggy with his injuries. I think Porro's a good player, but I think he's dropped off, as you said, exhaustion. But I think you look at Tottenham, had they maybe been able to get Pedro Neto, had they maybe got Murillo, and then managed to get even just someone left back cover. It doesn't have to be particularly fancy. It doesn't have to be someone particularly special, But I think they would be in a much better position. I think definitely. I think one signing that was a regular starter that's coming in the summer wasn't. I don't think Ange did enough. I think you did so many good signings. Like Archie Gray, I think is a really good signing. Odegaard, I think makes a lot of sense, but I think you needed players that are more ready now, and maybe it's just short-term blow, long-term gain. This is all going to pay off in 2-3 years. But Levy will have to give Ange those 2-3 years if he's doing that.
And this is why I like getting you on to talk about Tottenham and Man United, because there's a lot of comparisons really, because it is a lot of square pegs in round holes. It's almost like, I think like a Patrick Dorgu at Lecce would have been a good signing as a left back, as cover. But what we've had happen is Jed Spence isn't in the Europa League squad. You even saw last night, Dogi gets injured. Porro has to come on, play more minutes. Jed Spence goes to left back. Our left back covers with Reggie on, who he doesn't even play, and from his time at Man United, he's he's hanging on. And then we've got our other cover at left back was Micky van der Ven and Ben Davies, who are both injured. And actually, Ben Davies now plays better as a centre back than he does as a fullback. He just hasn't got the pace. He hasn't got that sort of ability to be comfortable on the ball in those inverted positions. So it almost is like I'm literally counting down the days until Luka Vuskovic can join us, because obviously we signed him at 16. He doesn't turn 18 until next year. So I feel like he could be a really good prominent player for us. Yang as well, I think we could get him in. He's coming in soon. I think I saw a clip, he was at the airport today. So the quicker we can get these players in, it sounds really nuts, but I think it will really help us out. But moving on now, and these sort of points are joint, like, I feel like I know your answer to this, but with all the sort of hoo-ha that's gone on with Spurs, if you were a Spurs fan, put your Spurs fan hat on, would you be Ange in or Ange out? I feel like I know your answers to this.
Yeah, Ange in, as I said earlier. Don't think there's money been spent, but I don't think he's had the backing. I was 10 in until we got battered by Tottenham, to be honest. I was 10 in right to the very end because I said managers need time, especially when they don't work with the smartest board. Even if money's spent, the people that were spending that money haven't always made the best decisions. And then I looked at the injuries and everything. And for me, with Ange, there's an identity, there's a style of football. Like you would top, I think you got second most goals in the league. That's quite something. If you look at your goal difference, you'd be in fourth or third for
It's
best.
nuts, isn't it?
And it gives an indication of actually when you are playing, you're playing well, but you're just in that bad period. And I think if everybody got fit and you start playing well again, I think it would balance out. And I guess it's so close now, but as I said, I think because of the injuries, and I look at your team, I don't think another manager comes in and makes you better. And also, like, you've got to look at what managers available right now want to go to Tottenham right now in the sort of the situation that it's in. Is there any manager out there that I think would be able to come to Tottenham, would want to come to Tottenham and do a better job than Ange? And like, not really. It's not like Sir Alex Ferguson's going to come out of retirement and say, I want to manage Tottenham. I just think, it's a situation beyond the manager.
And the thing is, like, Levy from, Tottenham journalists, we've seen that apparently he's going to back him, which is promising. And he's, Levy sort of having to step up now. There's a lot of pressure, he won't like the fact that the fans are chanting Levy out. We obviously know that a lot of Spurs fans dislike Levy, but the fact it's now so public, and even people on Sky Sports and TalkSport are talking about it, Levy will not like that. But it sort of needs to happen because, as you say there, I talk to so many people in my comment section, say we need to get rid of him. And I say, who do you want? And there are not many names popping up. They say Iriola, they say Frank. And I just say, the same will happen. They won't be backed. They'll have a bit of a bounce. Levy will think this is fine. Even like, we need more consistency. Let's get Thomas Frank. Have you seen Brentford's form? Win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, depending if they're home or away. I'm not ready for that yet. I don't think, even Brentford's defensive record's not been as good as some people will think. But moving on then, and I want to ask you this question. You've mentioned a lot of names already that you rate as Spurs, but I want you to pick your top three who have been impressing you. Because the reason I want to ask you this is because your titles when you do a Spurs video are usually insert name is class, insert name is mint. So I just want to get your overall, because you do praise a lot of Spurs players. Who have been your top three this season, would you say?
Obviously Kulusevski, I think that one would be everybody's top three. I think he's fantastic. I think he's been consistent as well. I think he is better centrally. He's been put out the right a bit recently. I'd say him. I'd say Sarr. I think Sarr because he's so young, he has hot and cold moments. But yeah, he was probably him and Maddison between my man of the match. Sarr and Kulu are two players I rate highly. I think Maddison is a player that gets a bit of unfair criticism, but I'd say top three would be Van de Ven, Sarr, and probably Kulu. Like they're three players that if I had to like look at sort of Man United as well, I'd be like, those three. And then you've got a few youngsters like Moore, Bergvall, Gray. I think there's something there, but it's very early days with them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with Sarr. The thing is with Sarr is he is our rare midfielder. There's not many. We haven't got another one like him in the team, and he has come into games where whether it be West Ham, turned on his head and offered that more, that strength. He's really good in the area now. We saw with his footwork against Southampton. I like a lot of what I see with him. Obviously, he's got a long way to go. He's still young, so I think I agree with you there. Kulusevski, I mean, I backed him when his form dipped. Everyone sort of thought he peaked when he came in that half season under Conte, but I actually think now he's shut. The funny thing is, and I said this to someone the other day, if he was a winger in the early noughties for the Premier League, he'd be fantastic because I feel like there was less wingers who were reliant on that pace, and I think of maybe like a Ryan Giggs type who would just drive at the Yeah, exactly. He would drive at defences. He's good on the ball, good crossing. Whereas now it's like your modern winger, your Mo Salah, your Bukayo Saka is expected to get double digits every season, which is just bonkers. The player I'd put to the fore, and this is my defence of him, and I feel like you'd agree with me, Dominic Solanke. I think Dominic Solanke, first thing people say last night, like on those stat news Twitter accounts is he hasn't scored against Southampton, he's terrible. I think what you got to do is you see what Solanke offers to Spurs. He offers us a focal point that we haven't had since Harry Kane. He's not a Harry Kane replacement. He is, another striker to, fit the mould that Ange wants to see. Richarlison could have been that, but his injury record speaks for itself, which is a shame because Richarlison had a good, all right season last year. But I think Solanke, what he offers off the ball, his link-up play, how he brings others into play, he's unselfish. It's a bit like, I think he's a more advanced version of, say, like, Mikel Antonio, or sometimes he could play like a bit like Firmino, not in the sense of he's sacrificing all the
He
time.
helps out the team. Like
That's
the
what
team
it is.
better when he's in there. Even if he doesn't score, his work rate, his pressing, his ability to drop deep, it gives Tottenham a bit more stability and shape. And I think that I've always said it's been good. It's not just about goals. It's like when he's not played because the obvious rest is needed, you've kind of noticed that presence is gone. And I think the pressing and the work rate, as you mentioned, the link up is good. I feel a bit, he does drop quite deep at times, but he looks like a DM at times. And I feel a bit because Tottenham score a lot of goals, but I still don't think he gets a lot of service. And
No,
that's the thing. And I think, but all in all, I'd say he's been good.
that's the thing. In games where he hasn't scored, he hasn't really had that service. And I say to people, and I can sort of tell the fans that don't watch a lot of Spurs because they'll be like, "Well, why aren't you playing Son through the middle? He was all right there last season. In patches, he was like he played against West Ham through the middle and was bullied. He's not that aerial threat." But then some people say, "Well, is Son that perfect winger for an Ange system of wanting to be like so far out on the left?" I'll ask you that as a bonus question. What have you made of Son this season? Because a lot of people are sort of questioning whether he's done at this level. Which, I mean, I love him to bits. He's my namesake for God's sake. But what do you sort of make of Son's trajectory now?
Yeah, I think like he's a good player. Obviously, it doesn't take a genius to tell you that. And I think he's still got 11 goal contributions in 12 games this season. He's not finished by any means. He's not a touchline winger for me, and it's a bit like Kulu. Son and Kulu, they don't suit particularly Ange's ball being out wide. I think Son is more suited to it than Kulu, but I think Son is, and this is sort of what he did when he was playing his best football, is sort of he's not a forward, but he's not a winger. He's sort of that left forward in between, sort of like Salah at Liverpool. I mean, Rashford, when he played his best football, was sort of there. It's not being super wide, hugging the touchline. He likes to sort of come in, make those runs in behind. He's, sort of lethal 1v1 finisher. And I think obviously Ange, there's a little bit more demands of him physically. And when you're aging, I think that will get to you a little bit. And I don't think he's been at his very best this season, but you've got to think of the age, everything coming in to place. I think when yesterday you had quite a good game, but what I noticed was Maddison was coming out quite to the left and Son could sort of come in. And I think that helped when they were sort of interchanging. Because I think he's probably better on the wing than striker. I mean, there's certain games where he could be your striker and suit the game state. As you mentioned, he wouldn't have done well in the West Ham game with the physicality. But I think he sort of does play a little bit better on the wing closer to goal, which obviously Ange likes touchline, sort of pacey wingers. And that's something that obviously Tottenham will need to look at moving forward.
Yeah,
But he's still
yeah.
a quality player.
Yeah, he's still got it. Like he's finishing and he's passing yesterday, like for the Madison goal, that outside of the foot. He's still got it. We know he hasn't got the pace like he did when he worked with Kane. And I think people forget when he was working with Kane, one of the best duos we've ever seen in the Premier League. So I think people need to take that into account. There's a lot of reactionary sort of stuff when it comes to Son, for example. But final question for for the Tottenham section, I should say, before we get onto some Man United points, which I'm sure you'd like to talk about. With Spurs, then, so what problems do you think they need to fix, and can Ange Postecoglou fix them? Because obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say that we're faultless because we haven't been. We've shown proper patchy form. But what does Ange really need to address to get this Tottenham side ticking? Would you say?
Ooh, I think a lot of it just comes down to injuries, as sort of spoke to earlier. I think if Solanke could be rotated with Richarlison, because Solanke's the main guy, he's been good, but when he runs as much as he does, I think there'd be the odd game where you think, Europa League side against blah 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 blah. This is a game for Richarlison. I think, if you could bring back Richarlison and Van de Ven and Romero and the injured players, even an Odegaard or Mikey Moore would be interesting to bring in and see how they do. I think that's obviously massive because you look at the bench and it's like, oh, that's very thin. And I think that's a big thing. I think there was adaptations. Like I really liked how he, when you beat us 3-0, we had Bentancur, Kulu, Maddison, midfield three. Again, Bentancur, I think, has got Premier League ban for a couple more games. But I liked how he actually adapted and brought Kulu off the right wing position and into the middle with Maddison and Bentancur because I thought that worked really well together. And then you've got players like Sarr and Berg forward and Basuma that can also go into the midfield. And I think you've got midfields that he can just change depending on the game state. Some games will suit Sarr better, some games will suit Bentancur together, some games might suit, Maddison on the bench, which he's done, or Kulu playing, or Kulu on the bench. I think that's worked well. But I think really, and it's difficult because obviously with Odegaard and more, but I think you maybe just need that out and out winger because of Son's age and just Werner just being Werner. I think had you got Pedro Neto, that would have been a great signing in the summer. And then, as spoke about earlier, it's just the left side of your defence, the coverage there. I mean, Ben Davies been good covered, but he's injured. But if you can get someone that was really going to give a doggy competition and someone that can back up Van der Ven, I think that's what he needs the most. And maybe he can rotate more and change it up a bit more when things aren't going his way. But to be fair to him, the squad is thin at the moment.
Yeah, I have to agree with all that, really. But yeah, Manchester United chat then. And make it plain and simple, as you said, you're buzzing after that Derby result. And, my opinion, I think Amorim's been great. I think, as I said, square peg round holes. He's trying to play this three at the back system. A lot of the players, you've had Johnny Evans playing in like certain positions, and he's not good for that. You've had players playing wing back when they're not wing back. Fernandes trying to find his feet in a different role. So, to sum it up, what have you made of Amorim's start to life at Manchester United? Because it has been turmoil, the Ashworth news, it's been proper, typical Manchester United news.
Yeah. As you said, typical Manchester United. I said, a lot of fans have been screaming Ten Hag out for a while, and I said after the Tottenham loss, I think he probably looks better for Ten Hag to go. But I said it's not a case of a new manager walks in and turns it around. I was really happy we got Amorim, and he would have been one of my first picks. And I said, but look, we can't expect miracles. These are the same players that have done it to this manager and that manager and that manager. And as you said, Ashworth going, it's been very hectic in and around United. We've been quite lucky in the sense of most of our players are coming back from injury. Like Yoro's just come back in time. Mainoo's just come back in time from injury last week, which has obviously helped out Amorim. And I think, I think what I like about Amorim is we under Ten Hag, when we played Man City, it was anti-football. It was anti-football. Obviously, when Ten Hag played Man City, they were a lot better than they were now. Amorim didn't go to Man City playing anti-football. He went there to play football. We matched them for possession. Our XG was 3 times higher than theirs. And when we lost to Nottingham Forest last week, it was because Onana had a howler and let 2 goals in that he shouldn't have let in. And Lisandro Martinez made a silly mistake. I was like, he done well versus Forest. We lost. He deserved at least a draw at the City game, and I actually think we probably deserved the win when you just look at the extra quality. We missed 2 big chances before that. We gifted them a set piece. And the first half display versus Arsenal, we were the better team, and then obviously corners. I think something like 60 something percent of the goals we conceded come from corners this season, which that needs to be worked on, of course. But I've been happy with what I've seen because I just said it's not about where we finish in the league, it's just about an identity and then maybe seeing improvements in sort of players because I think every player was sort of going downhill under Ten Hag. And I have to say, Ruud van Nistelrooy came in the 4 games under him, the players had massively improved. But, Ugarte, first 2 games at United were shaky and he's been faultless for about 8 games now. He's been unbelievable. Obviously, Ahmad been fantastic. Mazraoui been fantastic. Højlund has 5 goals and 5 starts under Amorim as well. So there's definitely things there. He's not a miracle worker. Dalot was a good player that clearly doesn't suit his system, but in a back four, you rate Dalot in a back five, he's not it. But I've been happy all in all. He needs investment on that left side, 100%.
Oh, sorry about that. Mic going everywhere. But I tend to agree. But you say there about consistency, focus on the league. But, something Erik Ten Hag did do well was winning those cups and, moving that on. We got this big cup quarter final on Thursday, and it means a lot for both clubs. I think United will want to make a statement, move on, even though Ten Hag won them and it didn't mean much in the end. But it's still good to go deep in the cup competitions. And Spurs, Ange Postecoglou, all this winning in his second season and stuff like that, and the trophy drought. So who does it mean more for? Who needs the win in this cup competition?
I think maybe Tottenham actually, just because Man United have won 2 trophies in 2 years. We've recently won the Carabao. I think there's a bit more, weirdly or not, there's a bit more positivity around Man United than Tottenham, just because I think people have accepted it's a new manager. We've kind of like written the season off already. I think a lot of fans haven't just said, can we see progress? Whereas I think Tottenham, because you started the season quite well and you were playing some really good football and you beat City 4-0. I think in this being Ange's second season, whilst Amorim's just come in, I think there's a bit more expectations on Tottenham. And it should be the other way. Man United should always be the club, I think, with the highest expectations on them because of what's happened in the past. But I think we're at a point where the fan base is sort of just chilled a bit. I think everybody's like, this is going to need time. Where I think there's maybe, I wouldn't say there's pressure on Ange in terms of the board. I think the problem is very clear that it's the backing and stuff. But I think the Tottenham fans probably need that trophy a little bit more because we've just won sort of two. But I'd love to win as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, ideally, if I could pick one, I haven't got the right to pick one, but I'd like us to win the Europa League because I think it means more. But the Carabao Cup, rather, I think it's actually quite tricky because we'd have to beat you. We'd probably get drawn against Liverpool and then probably Arsenal or something like that. That's how it would work, I think, depending on how the other games go as well. But yeah, I'm nervous for it because it's a big tie, it's a big game. Tottenham Man United's always quite heated. We haven't got the best of records, but in recent years, it's sort of leveled out a little bit, you could say. But finally, to wrap it all up then, because I know you've got, you're very busy, but how do you sort of see the contest going and what are your predictions?
This is so difficult because I said the 2 teams that worry me the most this season outside of Liverpool, I said will be Newcastle and Tottenham. And the reason I said that, which might be quite rogue, is because I think they have players that can outrun you. Like
Hmm.
Newcastle, they're the reason they got points versus Liverpool, Arsenal, City is because they can outrun people and that's how they cause so many issues. And I think that's with Tottenham. I think the reason you beat us 3-0 when it could have been 4-5-0, and I actually think we were worse than when we played you than we were when we lost 3-0 to Liverpool. I think you were the worst performance we had under 10 from a United perspective, is because you just completely outrun us. Your energy levels, your everything. Obviously, the red card's not going to help, the silly Bruno red card. But I think, it's difficult because Tottenham are Tottenham, Spurs are Spursy. You don't know what Spurs side's going to show up. But then same with Man United, you don't know what Man United side's going to show up, and it's always hard to predict. But I am worried because of just the athleticism of Tottenham. I think Sarr could cause problems, with his running, and as we sort of spoke about earlier. But I think one thing I've noticed under Ruben Amorim is he set us up a lot better than Ten Hag did. There's a lot less space, and I think you battered us because of the spaces that you could exploit. The way Van de Ven could run through our whole team, and I think we've looked quite solid defensively. Haaland didn't have a sniff yesterday. Maguire coming back from injury, Euro coming back from injury as well, brings that security that I actually think because of the exhaustion and injuries inside Tottenham, I'm going to back United to win this 2-1. But had you got everybody fit and you didn't have your injury issues, then I would probably say Tottenham would win. But I'm hoping that Amorim's going to do something different to Ten Hag.
That's what worries me because we've got Liverpool on Sunday. You've got Bournemouth, I believe. So I don't know how many games this team can have in the legs. I guess we'll go strong as well. I can imagine Solanke, Son, normal midfield, defence having to, sort of focus. But, it worked against City. We were able to stop them with Dragerson and, well, it was Ben Davis. But, yeah, I've got to back Tottenham. I'd say 2-1 the other way, which is basically like sitting on the
Yeah.
fence. But, yeah, it's just such a hard one to call. But, yeah, I'm nervous. You can probably tell by my body language and, and my expressions. But, yeah, it's going to be massive for both teams, and it could be the catalyst for both teams to actually finish the season strongly. But that's all we have time for today. I want to say a massive thank you to Alice for jumping on. I love when you jump on. We have really good chats about Tottenham and Man United. But where can the guys find you or watch this right now?
Yeah, big up everybody. Make sure you smash the like button for Sonny and subscribe to me if you're new. Yeah, if you want my Tottenham content, that is at Alice ECILA Football. If you don't know how to spell that, that's Alice spelled backwards. And then if you're interested in Man United content and the odd live stream, that is on Alice Talks Football. And then I also do like the odd waffling on Twitter as well. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers. Honestly, really appreciate you jumping on very last minute as well, because big game, and I wanted to get your opinions on Tottenham. But as Alice said, yeah, if you are new around here, leave your likes. So she's bigger than me. Leave your likes, subscribe, hit the notification bell, get your comments down below. Who do you think is going to win? And until next time, come on, you Spurs, and forget about those Red Devils.